He was the quiet father, trapped between his wife and son. We thought his silence was a weakness. It was actually a strategy, laid out in a legal document that will control Sumit's life from beyond the grave. For years, we watched Anil Singh, Sumit's father, sit in the background of one of the most tumultuous love stories in 90-Day Fiance history. We saw a man who seemed defeated, a patriarch who had lost control of his own household, quietly observing as his wife, Sana, unleashed torrents of rage and grief upon their son and his much older American partner, Jenny Slatten. We interpreted his sighs, his averted gaze, his soft-spoken words of resignation as the signs of a man who had simply given up. We were wrong. We were profoundly, devastatingly wrong. What we mistook for surrender was, in fact, the quiet confidence of a man who had already made his final move on the chessboard. If what our sources are reporting is true, then Anil Singh wasn't just a player in this family drama. He was its secret grandmaster, and his final move, a posthumous power play, is set to detonate the lives of everyone involved. To understand the magnitude of what's about to be revealed, you need to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and ring the notification bell. Because we are not just recapping a story, we are uncovering a conspiracy that has been years in the making. A secret so explosive it redefines everything you thought you knew about Sumit and Jenny. You are not going to want to miss a single update on this. Our story begins not in a heated family argument, but in the sterile, quiet halls of a law firm in Delhi. It begins with a source, a disgruntled former law clerk who, for the sake of his career and safety, must remain anonymous. This individual, burdened by what he describes as a crisis of conscience, has leaked the central, shocking clause from Anil Singh's last will and testament. This isn't speculation. This isn't a rumor. This is a direct report from someone who claims to have seen the document with his own eyes. The document, legally drafted and witnessed, lays out the disposition of the Singh family assets, a not insignificant portfolio of property and savings accumulated over a lifetime. And at its heart lies a poison pill, a clause so specific and so cruel it can only be described as a masterpiece of emotional warfare. The will, according to our source, states in no uncertain terms that Sumit Singh, the beloved son, will be the primary and almost sole heir to the family's entire fortune. He will inherit the properties, the investments, the life his parents built. But this inheritance, this birthright, is not guaranteed. It is conditional. It is contingent upon one single brutal act. Sumit must legally and completely dissolve his marriage to the American woman known as Jennifer Slatten within 12 calendar months of Anil Singh's death. 1 year. He has 1 year to erase his wife from his life, legally and officially. If he complies, if he chooses his family's legacy over his American love, the fortune is his. But if he refuses, if he chooses to remain married to Jenny, the clause is triggered, a disinheritance clause of catastrophic proportions. In that event, the entire inheritance, every last rupee, bypasses Sumit completely and is transferred directly to his brother, Amit Singh. Let that sink in. This isn't a suggestion. It's not a plea from the grave. It is a legally binding ultimatum. A checkmate delivered from beyond the veil of life and death. Suddenly, every quiet moment, every sad glance from Anil is reframed. He wasn't a passive observer watching his family implode. He was a long-term strategist. He was a general who understood that some wars cannot be won on the open battlefield. He saw the daily skirmishes, the screaming matches, the emotional blackmail from his wife, the stubborn defiance of his son. He knew he couldn't force them apart while he was alive. The more he and Sana pushed, the more Sumit dug in his heels, clinging to Jenny as an act of rebellion as much as an act of love. Anil saw this. He understood the psychology of his own son perfectly. So he stopped fighting the battle and started planning the war. A war he would win posthumously. Think back to every scene involving Anil. He was always the voice of calm, but not of support. He would listen to Sana's tirades and then turn to Sumit with a look of pained disappointment. He wasn't disappointed in Sumit's choice of partner. He was disappointed that Sumit was forcing his hand, forcing him to enact this final, terrible plan. He knew that while he was alive, Sumit had an ally, a buffer. However weak, against Sahana's fury, Sumit could always believe, or at least hope, that he could eventually win his father over. Anil allowed that hope to persist because it kept Sumit engaged. It kept him in the family orbit. But all the while, the ink was drying on a document that would vaporize that hope. Anil's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity and its cruelty. He realized he didn't need to defeat Sumit's love for Jenny. He just needed to put a price tag on it. He needed to force his son to look at this love not as a romantic ideal, but as an economic calculation. This theory, born from the leak, proves itself by explaining what was previously unexplainable. Why did Anil and Sana eventually, begrudgingly attend the wedding? Why did they seem to soften their stance ever so slightly? We thought it was acceptance. We thought it was the slow erosion of their resistance. Now, a more sinister interpretation emerges. They accepted the marriage because, in light of the will, the marriage itself became the trigger for Sumit's eventual downfall. It was no longer a permanent state of affairs in their eyes. It was a temporary condition with a legally mandated expiration date. They allowed Sumit to have his victory of marrying Jenny because Anil knew he held the ultimate trump card that would render that victory hollow. By allowing the marriage, Anil wasn't conceding. He was arming the trap. He needed the marriage to be legally binding for the will's condition of a legal dissolution to have any meaning. It was a calculated strategic retreat to set up the final, devastating ambush. The entire family dynamic now appears in a chilling new light. Sana was the loud, overt force, the emotional battering ram. Her role was to make Sumit's life with Jenny as unpleasant as possible on a daily basis, to create a constant state of stress and conflict. Anil, meanwhile, played the quiet, disappointed father. His role was to be the silent embodiment of the family honor and financial security that Sumit was supposedly throwing away. They were a perfectly coordinated team. Sana's hysteria made Anil's quiet disapproval seem like a reasonable, even loving concern. She was the bad cop. He was the sad cop. Together, they created a pincer movement designed to break Sumit's will. And when the emotional pressure campaign failed to produce the desired result, Anil had the legal and financial nuke waiting in his back pocket, ready to be launched from the grave. Let's dissect the psychological brilliance of this trap. Anil understood his son's deepest vulnerabilities. Sumit has always been a man caught between two worlds. He craves the modern romance and personal freedom represented by Jenny, but he is also deeply a product of his culture. He is a man who, at his core, desperately wants to be a good son. We saw him weep, time and time again, over his parents' disapproval. It wasn't just an act for the cameras. That pain was real. He has a profound, almost pathological need for his parents' validation. The will exploits this to its absolute limit. It tells Sumit, you can have our love, you can have our approval, you can fulfill your duty as a son, and you can be rich beyond your dreams. All you have to do is this one little thing: leave her. Furthermore, the will weaponizes Sumit's financial dependence. For his entire relationship with Jenny, Sumit has not been a provider in the traditional sense. He has struggled to find stable, well-paying work and has often relied on his parents or Jenny. He was raised with the expectation of a certain lifestyle, a certain level of comfort and security that comes from being part of the Singh family. The will doesn't just threaten poverty, it threatens to strip him of his identity. To choose Jenny is to choose a life of struggle, a life where he cannot provide for her in her old age, a life that is a constant, nagging reminder of the fortune he forfeited. Anil knew that for a man like Sumit, the abstract ideal of love is powerful, but the concrete, day-to-day reality of financial hardship is a corrosive acid that can eat away at even the strongest bonds. And then there is the masterstroke, pitting brother against brother. By making Amit the alternate heir, Anil created a situation of unbearable pressure. It's not an abstract charity that gets the money, it's his own brother. Amit and his wife have been presented as the good children, the ones who followed the rules, who had an arranged marriage, who lived a traditional life. The will validates them. It tells them, you were right all along. This sets up an impossible dynamic for Sumit. If he chooses Jenny, he's not just defying his deceased father's wishes. He's actively taking money and security away from his own brother and his family. He becomes the villain of his own family's story. Every time he sees Amit, he will be reminded of the wealth his brother now enjoys, wealth that should have been his. Every family gathering would become a tableau of his failure and Amit's success. It's a social and familial checkmate designed to isolate Sumit completely. Let's consider the timing. The one-year deadline is another piece of calculated genius. It's not immediate, which would inspire a purely emotional, defiant reaction. It's a slow burn. It gives Sumit a full year to experience the reality of his choice, a year for the initial grief over his father's passing to subside and for the cold, hard reality of his financial situation to set in, a year for small arguments with Jenny to become magnified by financial stress, a year for the pressure from his mother, his brother, and his entire community to mount, A year for him to watch Jenny age, to worry about her health, and to feel the crushing weight of being her sole caregiver without the resources to do it properly. Anil is giving his son enough rope to hang himself. He's counting on time, pressure, and the erosion of romantic ideals to do the work for him. This insider report also reframes the role of the family astrologer. Remember those scenes? The dire warnings, the predictions of bad fortune, the disapproval that was couched in cosmic certainty. We dismissed it as cultural superstition, another hurdle for the couple to overcome. But what if it was more than that? What if the astrologer was not an impartial mystic, but a tool in the family's psychological warfare? It's not a stretch to imagine that Anil and Sana, knowing the contents of the will, could have consulted with the astrologer to ensure his predictions aligned with their narrative. The astrologer's warnings about social ostracism and financial ruin weren't just predictions, they were a preview of the consequences outlined in Anil's will. They were laying the groundwork, seeding Sumit's mind with the idea that choosing Jenny would lead to a cursed life. It was all part of the grand, long-term strategy. Now, we must turn our attention to the central victim in this posthumous plot, Jenny. The cruelty of the will is most apparent when you consider its impact on her. She gave up everything to be with Sumit. She left her country, her family, her friends, her financial security. She has spent years of her life in a country where she is an outsider, fighting for a love that has been constantly under siege. She has endured insults, threats, and social isolation. And now she faces the ultimate betrayal. The will is designed to turn her greatest love into her greatest liability. It transforms her from Sumit's partner into an obstacle to his happiness and prosperity. The trap is perfectly designed to prey on Jenny's vulnerabilities. Her age is a key factor. When Anil passes, she will be even older, even more dependent on Sumit. The will forced Sumit to confront the reality of being married to a woman decades his senior, with all the potential health and caregiving challenges that entails, but without any of the financial resources to handle them. It's a cold, hard, and brutal calculation. Anil is forcing his son to ask a terrible question. Is this aging woman worth the price of my entire future? The will also isolates Jenny completely. If Sumit chooses the money, where does she go? She would be a divorcee in her late 60s or 70s in a foreign country, with no family, no support system, and likely no legal right to stay. Her visa status is tied to her marriage to Sumit. A divorce wouldn't just mean a broken heart. It could mean deportation. It would be a life-shattering event from which she might never recover. Anil's plan doesn't just end a marriage. It potentially destroys a woman's life. This is the reckoning that awaits. The moment Anil Singh passes away, a clock starts ticking. The period of mourning for Sumit will be simultaneously a period of agonizing decision-making. He will be presented with his father's last will and testament, and the choice will be laid bare. On one hand, the love of his life, a woman who has stood by him through everything, but a woman who represents a future of financial uncertainty and social disapproval. On the other hand, a fortune, the restoration of his family's honor, the approval of his mother and brother, and the life of comfort and status he was raised to expect. But it comes at the cost of abandoning the woman he loves in her most vulnerable years. His father has, with one single clause in a legal document, managed to do what years of arguments and tears could not. He has forced Sumit to put a final monetary value on his love for Jenny. He has distilled their entire epic, decade-long romance down to a simple, brutal transaction. Is this love worth the Singh family fortune? Yes or no. This is no longer a family dispute. It is a legal and ethical nightmare. The quiet, sad father has revealed himself to be a puppet master of the highest order, pulling strings from beyond the grave, ensuring that his will, in every sense of the word, is done. The implications are staggering and they ripple outwards. How will Sana act after Anil's death? Will she present the will as a sacred dying wish, a final commandment from a loving father that Sumit must obey? You can be certain she will. She will use it as the ultimate tool of emotional manipulation. How will Amit react? Will he pressure his brother to take the inheritance, or will he stand by, ready to collect his windfall, painting Sumit's choice of love as a betrayal of the entire family? And what about Jenny? How does a person live with a spouse for a year, knowing that there is a ticking clock on their marriage, knowing that every day their partner is weighing their love against a fortune? The psychological torment of that situation is almost unimaginable. It would poison every interaction, every moment of affection, turning their home into a pressure cooker. We must also consider the legal angle. While conditional wills are not unheard of, a condition that forces a divorce, especially in a cross-cultural marriage, could be subject to legal challenges. Could Jenny fight this in the Indian courts? Perhaps. A lawyer might argue the clause is against public policy by encouraging the dissolution of a valid marriage. But such a legal battle would be expensive, protracted, and ugly. It would pit Sumit and Jenny against the full financial and social weight of the Singh family, represented by Sahna and Amit. It would be a grueling, soul-crushing process that would further drain their resources and their spirits. And there is no guarantee of success. Anil's lawyers would have undoubtedly drafted the clause to be as ironclad as possible, framing it not as a punishment for being married, but as a reward for fulfilling his duties to the family lineage. This entire narrative, this explosive insider report, forces us to reevaluate everything. It paints a picture of a traditional family patriarch who, faced with a modern challenge he could not comprehend or control, resorted to a form of scorched earth tactics. He couldn't win the argument, so he decided to buy the outcome. He couldn't force his son to obey in life, so he constructed a scenario where disobedience and death would come at an unbearable price. It is a story of tradition versus modernity, of familial duty versus individual love, and of the terrifying power that money and inheritance can wield over human relationships. The quiet man in the background was never in the background. He was in the command center, watching, learning, and planning. Every tear Sumit shed, every plea Jenny made, every threat Sana screamed, they were all just data points for Anil. He was analyzing his son's weaknesses, his wife's strengths, and the structural vulnerabilities of his son's relationship with an older foreign woman. He wasn't weak, he was patient. He wasn't defeated, he was biding his time. He understood that true power isn't about winning every argument, it's about controlling the outcome. And with this will, Anil Singh has guaranteed that, one way or another, he will control the final outcome of Sumit's life. He has set the stage for the ultimate test of his son's character, a test delivered from the great beyond. The board is set, the pieces are in motion, and the game will only truly begin upon the death of the king. The question is, will Sumit sacrifice his queen to save himself? Let's play out the endgame. Let's imagine the moments after Anil Singh's passing, after the initial period of culturally appropriate mourning has concluded. The family gathers in a sterile, wood-paneled office. The air is thick with unspoken tensions. On one side sits Sana, her face a mask of performative grief, but her eyes sharp, expectant. Beside her is Amit, the dutiful son, looking uncomfortable, perhaps already aware of the role he's about to play, and across the table sits Sumit, his heart heavy with the loss of his father, completely unprepared for the blow that is about to fall. Jenny is not in the room. She would not be. In the eyes of the family, she is not truly family. She is waiting at home, ready to comfort her husband, unaware that the very foundation of her life is about to be systematically demolished. The lawyer, a man with a professionally somber expression, opens the portfolio and begins to read. He speaks in dry, legalistic terms, his voice a monotone drone that belies the emotional devastation he is about to unleash. He goes through the preliminary bequests, the small gifts to distant relatives, the charitable donations, and then he arrives at the central clause, the one that deals with the primary inheritance. As he reads the words, "To my firstborn son, Sumit Singh, I bequeath the entirety of my remaining estate, properties, and assets." Sumit might feel a flicker of relief, a sense of his father's final love and validation. But then comes the conjunction, the pivot upon which his entire world will turn. On the condition that, the lawyer continues, his voice unwavering, that his legally recognized marriage to the American woman known as Jennifer Slatten be formally and legally dissolved within 12 calendar months following the date of my death. Silence. A profound ringing silence in the room. Sumit doesn't understand at first. The words are English, but they don't make sense. Dissolved? Condition? He looks at the lawyer, then at his mother, and on Sahna's face, he sees it. Not surprising, not a shock. He sees a flicker of grim triumph. He sees the glint of victory in her eyes. And in that moment, he understands. This wasn't just his father's will. This was a family conspiracy. His father provided the weapon, and his mother is here to make sure it is fired. The lawyer continues, the words now hitting Sumit like physical blows. Should this condition not be met within the specified time frame, the aforementioned inheritance in its entirety shall pass to my second son, Amit Singh. Sumit looks at his brother, who refuses to meet his gaze, staring intently at his own hands clasped on the table. Amit's silence is his consent. His shame is his complicity. The drive home for Sumit must be a blur. How does he even begin to form the words to tell Jenny? How does he explain that his dead father has just placed a bounty on their marriage? He walks into their home and she comes to him, her face full of concern for her grieving husband. She asks him how it went, and he has to tell her. He has to relay the cold, legal terminology of their love's death sentence. Imagine the scene, the disbelief on Jenny's face quickly turning to horror, then to a deep, chilling fear. This is the ultimate nightmare she could never have imagined. All her sacrifices, all the battles she fought were not to win Sumit's freedom, but merely to start a one-year countdown to her own expulsion. Her love story has been retroactively turned into a business contract with a termination clause. The first few weeks, they would be a fortress, a unit of two against a cruel, manipulative world. Their grief and their anger would unite them. Sumit would be defiant. "I will never do it," he would tell her, holding her tight. "I choose you. I will always choose you. The money means nothing. My father was a cruel man. My mother is a monster. It's us against them." And Jenny would believe him. She would have to believe him. They would probably seek legal advice, their hopes briefly buoyed by a lawyer who tells them about the possibility of challenging the will. They would feel a sense of righteous purpose. They would prove them all wrong. They would show the world that their love is not for sale. But Anil's strategy was never about the first month. It was about the 11th. As the initial shock wears off, the pressure begins. It's a slow, methodical campaign. It starts with Sahna. She wouldn't scream or shout, not at first. That was the old tactic. The new tactic is far more insidious. She would approach him with a suffocating, mournful love. "Your father only wanted what was best for you, Sumit," she would whisper, her voice cracking with manufactured emotion. "He saw the future. He saw you struggling. He saw this woman holding you back, making you poor and unimportant. He did this out of love. His final act was to give you a chance to save yourself. Are you going to spit on your loving father's grave?" Every conversation would be a guilt trip. Every visit would be a reminder of the life he's throwing away. She would paint a picture of his father, not as a manipulator, but as a prescient saint who made a hard choice to protect his foolish son. Then the pressure would come from Amit. It would be more subtle. He might call Sumit, ostensibly to see how he's doing, but the conversation would inevitably drift. "The kids' school fees are going up," he might say. "We're thinking of moving to a bigger place, but it's so expensive." Each statement is a small, sharp dig. He's not just talking about his own life, he's talking about the money. He's talking about the inheritance that Sumit is hoarding by staying with Jenny. He is reminding Sumit that his choice is not happening in a vacuum. It is directly impacting the well-being of his nieces and nephews. He would make Sumit feel selfish. How can Sumit justify his own happiness when it comes at the expense of his brother's family? Anil's genius was in making Amit's prosperity directly conditional on Sumit's misery. Simultaneously, the financial reality would begin to set in. Love may be free, but life is not. Their apartment needs repairs. The cost of food is rising. Jenny might have a minor health scare, and the cost of medication and doctor's visits becomes a source of major stress. Sumit's job, if he has one, is likely not enough to sustain them comfortably. The weight of being the provider, a role he has never successfully filled, becomes crushing. He would start to notice things he never did before. The nice cars his friends drive, the vacations his cousins take, the life he was supposed to have. Every single financial struggle, no matter how small, becomes a referendum on his decision to stay with Jenny. A leaking faucet isn't just a plumbing problem. It's a symbol of the fortune he forfeited. A declined credit card isn't just an inconvenience. It's a screaming indictment of his choice. And this is where the poison of Anil's will would begin to seep into the relationship itself. The arguments would start, likely not about the will directly, but about money. "Why did you buy that? We can't afford it." "Do you have to have the air conditioner on so high?" These small, bitter exchanges, born of financial anxiety, would chip away at their bond. Sumit might start to grow resentful, not consciously of Jenny, but of their situation. And since Jenny is inextricably linked to their situation, the resentment would, inevitably, find its way to her. He would look at her, and a dark thought, unbidden and hideous, might flicker in the back of his mind. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have to worry about this." He would hate himself for thinking it, but the thought would be there, a seed planted by his father now beginning to sprout. For Jenny, this year would be a unique form of psychological torture. She would watch the man she loves slowly being crushed by the weight of his father's ultimatum. She would see the light in his eyes dim. She would feel him pulling away, even as he goes through the motions of affection. She would become hyper-vigilant, analyzing his every mood, his every sigh. Is he thinking about the money? Does he regret choosing me? She would try to make herself smaller, less of a burden. She would stop asking for things. She would pretend she is fine when she is not. She would live in a constant state of fear, knowing that the man who is her entire world is being systematically incentivized to abandon her. Sana would not limit her attacks to Sumit. Oh no. She would find a way to get to Jenny, perhaps a phone call or a chance encounter at the market. And her approach to Jenny would be different. It would be a twisted appeal to her love for Sumit. If you truly love him, Sana would say, her voice dripping with false sympathy, you will not let him destroy his life for you. You are an old woman. You have lived your life. He is a young man with his future ahead of him. Do you love him enough to set him free? A real partner would not want to be the reason for his suffering. Let him go. It is the most loving thing you can do. She would frame Jenny's departure not as a defeat, but as the ultimate act of selfless love, turning Jenny's own best quality against her. She would try to convince Jenny that staying with Sumit is, in fact, the most selfish thing she could do. Let's imagine we're 9 months into the countdown. The deadline is looming. Sumit is a ghost. He is thin, tired, and deeply depressed. His defiance has evaporated, replaced by a weary resignation. His relationship with Jenny is strained to the breaking point. The laughter is gone, replaced by long, tense silences. They are no longer partners fighting a common enemy. They are two prisoners in a cell, acutely aware that only one of them can walk out free. The family pressure is relentless. Sana now talks about her dying wish, being to see her son fulfill his father's will. Amit has stopped being subtle and now openly talks about the family's money and how Sumit is being irresponsible. The entire community, no doubt informed by Sahna, looks at Sumit with a mixture of pity and contempt. He is the fool who chose a withered American over his own blood and fortune. This is the point where Sumit would have to make his choice. Let's game out the two paths, the two private hells that his father so carefully constructed for him. Scenario 1. Sumit chooses love. On the 364th day, he informs the estate's lawyer that he will not be divorcing his wife. The next day, the entirety of the Singh fortune is legally transferred to Amit. There is a moment of relief. The decision is made. The pressure is off. But this relief is fleeting. What is their life like now? It is a life of what if. Sumit and Jenny will stay together, but their love will forever be defined by the sacrifice. Sumit will have to live with the knowledge that he is the man who made his family poor. He will have to watch his brother live the life he was supposed to have. Every success Amit has will feel like a failure for Sumit. Every struggle Sumit and Jenny face will be a reminder of the cost of their love. Can their relationship survive this? Perhaps, but it will be a relationship haunted by the ghost of a different life, a more comfortable life. Sumit's love for Jenny will have to be strong enough to overcome not just external pressure, but his own internal, lifelong programming about duty, wealth, and success. He might grow to resent her in a quiet, unspoken way. And Jenny will have to live with the guilt, whether it's fair or not, of knowing she is the cause of his hardship. She will forever be the woman he gave up a fortune for, a label that is both romantic and incredibly heavy. Their love story would end not with a bang, but with the slow, grinding erosion of poverty and regret. Scenario 2. Sumit chooses money. This is perhaps the darker path. He doesn't just wake up one day and ask for a divorce. It's a slow, agonizing process of justification. He convinces himself it is the right thing to do. I can't take care of you like this, Jenny, he would say, his voice hollow. We're always fighting about money. This isn't the life I want for you. My father was right. I am not strong enough to live like this. He would frame it as a sacrifice he is making for her good, a twisted logic to soothe his own conscience. He would break her heart, piece by piece, all while telling himself he is doing it for a noble reason. The divorce proceedings would be a nightmare. Jenny, alone in a foreign country, would be utterly destroyed. Where does she go? Back to America, to her daughter, with nothing to show for a decade of her life, but a shattered heart and a story of betrayal? The image of a 70-year-old Jenny, forced to start her life over from scratch, is almost too painful to contemplate. And what of Sumit? He gets the money, he moves back into the family home. He is welcomed back into the fold by Sana and a slightly guilty, but now very wealthy Amit. He has fulfilled his duty. He is a rich man, but he is a hollow man. He would live in a gilded cage, forever haunted by the face of the woman he abandoned. Every quiet moment, every lonely night, he would be confronted by the magnitude of his betrayal. He would have his mother's approval and his father's money, but he would have lost his soul. Sana would likely find a suitable Indian girl for him to marry, and he would go through with it, a passive participant in his own life. He would have chosen security over love, and in doing so, he would have secured a life sentence of quiet desperation. He would have won the battle his father set for him, but he would have lost the war for his own happiness. This is the true diabolical nature of Anil's will. It's not a choice between love and money. Both paths lead to a different kind of misery. There is no winning move. It is a perfect trap. A problem with no solution, designed to punish his son for his disobedience, no matter what he chooses. It's a final, brilliant, and utterly monstrous checkmate. Anil has ensured that Sumit will be punished. The only question is the method of his suffering. A life of poverty with the woman he loves, or a life of wealth without the only person who truly understood him. This is the ultimate cliffhanger, the final test engineered by a father from the great beyond. Every scene we've ever watched of this family has been a prelude to this one final, devastating choice. The quiet father, the screaming mother, the defiant son, the foreign lover, they were all just pieces on a board, being moved into position for this endgame. What we thought was a messy, chaotic family drama was, in fact, a meticulously plotted tragedy, and the final act is about to begin. So I ask you, the viewers who have watched this unfold for years, what will Sumit choose? Put yourself in his shoes, trapped in this impossible dilemma. Does he follow his heart into a life of struggle, or does he follow his father's command into a life of comfortable emptiness? This isn't just a TV show anymore. It's a profound moral question. Give us your prediction in the comments. Let's debate, let's discuss, because the final chapter of the story is yet to be written, and the outcome will redefine everything we know about love, family, and the price of happiness.